For nearly 4 decades, audiences have adored Journey to the West, 1986, as China's most magical childhood classic, a series filled with color, humor, and mythic wonder. But behind its bright facade lies a pattern so dark, so unsettling, that few dared to speak about it publicly. One by one, members of the cast began facing accidents, mysterious illnesses, career-ending injuries, and even early deaths, a string of misfortunes that felt almost impossible to ignore. The gentle, loyal Xiao Wujing, played by Yan Huaili, spent the rest of his life battling pain from brutal onset injuries. The serene and divine goddess Guanyin, portrayed by Zhu Lin, vanished from screens for years, struggling with health complications no one fully explained. Even the actors behind various demons and creatures, figures meant to embody chaos and danger only on screen, found themselves encountering eerily similar tragedies off-screen. To the public, these events became whispers of a Journey to the West curse. But behind the mythology lies a far more complicated question. Were these tragedies supernatural, or the result of a dangerous, unregulated production that left lifelong damage in its wake? As we peel back the layers of silence surrounding this legendary show, a chilling truth emerges. Magic comes at a cost, and the brightest stories can cast the darkest shadows. This is the side of Journey to the West that China never explained, and perhaps never wanted anyone to uncover. Among all the tragedies tied to Journey to the West, 1986, none feels heavier or more haunting than the slow, painful decline of Yan Huaili, the actor who embodied the loyal and stoic Xiao Wujing. On screen, he was the calmest member of the pilgrimage, gentle, patient, always carrying the baggage while others fought the battles. But off-screen, his life became a quiet struggle shaped by injuries that never healed and hardships he never spoke about. What began as a demanding performance soon turned into a lifetime burden. During filming, Yan Huaili endured some of the most brutal physical conditions of the entire cast. His costume, soaked, heavy, and suffocating, could weigh nearly 20 kilograms under the scorching sun, scenes requiring him to wade through rivers, mud pits, and deep water often turned dangerous. In one terrifying incident, he slipped beneath the surface of a lake in Zhejiang, dragged down by his soaked costume. Crew members barely pulled him out in time. The production kept filming. There were no doctors, no rest days, no safety protocols. What audiences saw as devotion was, in reality, a man forced to push past exhaustion because the project couldn't afford delays. Over time, the strain destroyed his spine. His lower back bent unnaturally forward, a deformity that became more pronounced in his later years. Even when the cameras stopped, the pain did not. For decades after the show ended, Yan Huaili lived with chronic agony, relying on medication and quiet endurance to get through each day. He continued acting when he could, but those who knew him personally said he never truly recovered. Not physically, not mentally. Despite this, he never blamed the production, never spoke a word about the pain, and never revealed the full extent of his suffering. That silence only deepened the eerie aura surrounding his story. By the time he passed away in 2009, at just 73, the public had already begun whispering about a curse, a belief that the role of Xiao Wujing brought misfortune, or that the series itself left a dark shadow over its cast. But behind the superstition lies something far more grounded and far more tragic. The body of a man who gave everything to a legendary show and received little protection in return. His story isn't evidence of a curse. It's evidence of an industry that demanded sacrifice and offered silence. And yet, the timing and pattern of these tragedies made many wonder. Why did misfortune strike so many cast members, and why did it follow them long after the cameras stopped rolling? If the tragedy of Yan Huaili was a slow and silent descent, then the story of Zhu Lin, the ethereal actress who portrayed goddess Guanyin, felt like a sudden disappearance, a vanishing act that left the entire country unsettled. On screen, she embodied calm, purity, and divine compassion. Her image became so iconic that many considered her the most beautiful Guanyin ever filmed. But almost as quickly as she rose, she faded from the public eye, swallowed by a mystery no one could fully explain. After the series aired, Zhu Lin was praised nationwide, yet she did not ride the wave of fame like others. Instead, she stepped back, appearing in far fewer productions. Rumors began swirling that she had developed a serious illness, one strong enough to force her into long periods of rest. But here is where the story darkens. The exact nature of her condition was never disclosed. Chinese media offered vague statements, citing health reasons, recovery, or temporary retreat, always avoiding detail, always keeping the truth just out of reach. And because the role of Guanyin carried spiritual weight, the silence created an eerie vacuum. People wanted an answer. Instead, they got whispers. Those who worked on set later revealed that Zhu Lin's scenes were far more physically demanding than viewers ever imagined. Her makeup and costume required layers of heavy powder and adhesives to achieve the glowing, divine look. The bright halo effect behind her head, in reality, came from searing stage lights positioned dangerously close to her face. Each scene had her sitting under intense heat, thick smoke, and artificial fog that irritated the throat and lungs. More troubling were the industrial chemicals used to create the holy mist surrounding Guanyin. In the 1980s, Chinese productions often used improvised mixtures, cheap powders, burning incense, even aerosolized particles, to make the scenes look otherworldly. Breathing that environment repeatedly for hours at a time was not just uncomfortable, it was harmful. Insiders quietly acknowledged that Zhu Lin had complained of respiratory discomfort during filming, coughing fits, and painful headaches, symptoms that were dismissed as normal for the aesthetic they needed. There were no masks, no ventilation systems, and no safety regulations. What mattered was the perfect divine glow on screen. After filming ended, Zhu Lin's health reportedly deteriorated. She suffered prolonged fatigue, recurring inflammation, and long-term respiratory issues. While none of these details appeared in Chinese media, friends and former colleagues hinted that the filming conditions may have contributed to her later health complications. Yet the public preferred a different explanation, the supernatural one. Because she played Guanyin, any misfortune was seen as a taboo, a sign that the role carried spiritual consequences. Speculation exploded. Some believed she had violated temple customs. Others claimed she had absorbed negative energy from the role. And a few even whispered that the costume and ornaments were cursed. In the absence of facts, myths spread like wildfire. But what truly hid behind the curtain was something far more human: the consequences of working in an era where artistic ambition overshadowed actor safety. Zhu Lin's retreat from the industry and the hazy, evasive coverage surrounding her health only fueled suspicion. Why didn't China ever give a clear answer? Why was her condition spoken of in half-truths and metaphors? Why did the media, usually eager to celebrate national icons, suddenly grow silent when it came to her struggles? Even today, Zhu Lin remains a symbol of beauty and mystery, remembered for a role that defined Chinese television. But few realize that her portrayal came at a cost, one hidden beneath layers of smoke, scorching lights, and silence. And as more cast members faced tragedies of their own, a disturbing pattern began to take shape, one that made the public question whether the show was simply unlucky, or whether its misfortunes pointed to something far deeper. If the tragedies of Yan Huaili and Zhu Lin were enough to unsettle the audience, then the fate of the actors who played the demons and monsters of Journey to the West 1986 pushed the conversation into something far darker. No other group from the cast experienced such a dense concentration of accidents, injuries, and life-altering events, leading many to whisper about a shadow hanging over those who took on the role of evil spirits. In the story, these characters were meant to bring chaos. In real life, chaos found them. The filming conditions for these actors were brutal from the start. Most wore thick latex masks, layers of industrial adhesive, experimental foam rubber, and hand-painted coatings that trapped heat, chemicals, and sweat. Under the scorching lights, temperatures inside the masks could rise to 50 degrees Celsius, creating a suffocating chamber around their faces. Some actors fainted mid-scene, collapsing in heavy costumes, unable to breathe. But fainting was the least of the dangers. Many of the demon characters required complex makeup using improvised materials. In the 1980s, Chinese productions had no access to safe Hollywood-grade prosthetics. Instead, they relied on hardware store adhesives, oil paint, and chemical powders to create grotesque looks. Several performers developed severe allergic reactions, rashes, blisters, peeling skin, and one actor reportedly lost patches of hair permanently after a toxic mixture was applied near his scalp. Nothing was documented officially. On set, the phrase, "just wash it off," became a standard response to chemical burns. Physical injuries were even more frequent, because Journey to the West relied heavily on real martial arts choreography. No CGI, no wire rigs, no stunt doubles. Every demon fight scene required real impact. Actors were thrown, slammed, dragged, or struck with metal props that were advertised as safe, but in practice were little more than repurposed rods and sticks. One performer who played a mountain demon was knocked unconscious when a staff strike hit his temple harder than intended. Another actor, portraying a tiger spirit, fractured 2 ribs after being launched too high from a trampoline built in someone's backyard. Then, there were the scenes involving fire. To create monstrous transformations, the crew used open flames, fireworks, and handheld torches that scorched costumes and seared skin. Several demon actors suffered burns, some mild, some severe, yet production continued. They were expected to return to set within days, with bandages hidden under layers of makeup. Over the years, a disturbing number of these performers experienced long-term health complications. Some suffered respiratory issues from prolonged exposure to smoke and chemicals. Others dealt with chronic joint pain from stunt injuries that were never properly treated. A few passed away relatively young, their deaths attributed to illness or sudden medical complications. None were directly linked to the production, but the clustering of tragedies made audiences uneasy. And because these actors played villains, the folklore around them took on a supernatural tone. It didn't help that many of these performers disappeared from the industry entirely. Some retired early due to injuries. Others simply couldn't secure roles after their faces were hidden behind monstrous masks. The combination of physical damage, career stagnation, and shortened lifespans fueled the idea that they had been haunted by the roles they played. Yet, when examined from an investigative standpoint, a more grounded truth begins to emerge. These tragedies weren't mystical. They were the predictable outcome of a production that pushed bodies to the limit, used unsafe materials, and lacked basic medical oversight. Still, the unsettling part remains. Why did these incidents follow so many of them long after filming ended? Was it coincidence? Was it poor long-term health care? Or was it the psychological weight of performing intense, physically punishing roles without recognition or protection? In the absence of official explanations, China filled the silence with myth. And in that myth, the story of the unlucky demons became one of the darkest threads in the tapestry of Journey to the West. A lingering question mark that no one, not even the survivors, could fully explain. As the tragedies surrounding the cast of Journey to the West 1986 continued to surface, one uncomfortable truth slowly emerged. These misfortunes weren't random and they weren't mystical. Beneath the myths and whispers lay a pattern of systemic neglect, a production environment that pushed human bodies beyond their limits, wrapped in a culture that prized silence over safety. The deeper investigators dug, the more it became clear that the real curse wasn't supernatural at all. It was structural. The filming conditions of the 1980s in China were unforgiving, bordering on hazardous. Special effects were practical, not digital. Explosions were real, not simulated. And most stunts were performed by the actors themselves because hiring professional stunt doubles was considered too expensive. The cast of Journey to the West often worked in remote mountains, contaminated lakes, abandoned temples, and unstable cave systems, carrying heavy costumes and makeup for hours under relentless heat. The absence of safety standards meant injuries weren't exceptions. They were routine. Open flames were used to create divine glow effects. Chemical smoke was pumped into tight spaces to simulate fog. And low-quality fireworks were ignited dangerously close to actors' bodies. Scenes involving falling rocks, collapsing sets, or sudden bursts of fire were improvised with little margin for error. More than one performer walked away with burn scars, and at least one nearly suffocated when smoke machines malfunctioned during a cave sequence. There were no paramedics, no safety officers, no protocols. If someone was injured, they rested for a moment, applied makeshift first aid, and returned to filming. But perhaps the most damaging element was something less visible: chronic exposure to toxic substances. The makeup used to create mythical creatures contained industrial glues, lead-based paints, and aerosol powders that clung to the skin and entered the lungs. Fake fog was produced by burning chemical tablets. Costumes were dyed with materials that irritated the eyes and caused respiratory issues. Even the water where actors fought sea monsters was often polluted, stagnant, or infested with bacteria, leading to infections that lingered for years. What made it worse was not the presence of danger, but the absence of acknowledgement. The era's mindset treated suffering as a badge of honor. Actors were expected to endure, not complain. A culture of collective heroism overshadowed personal well-being. When someone was hurt, the common response was, "The show must go on." And it did, at a cost no one calculated until much later. Yet the silence wasn't only cultural, it was institutional. CCTV, the network producing the series, had every reason to protect the reputation of what would become China's most celebrated television achievement. Acknowledging the accidents, health risks, or long-term consequences could tarnish the mythic glow surrounding the production. So the tragedies were softened, hidden, or erased. The public saw smiling cast photos and triumphant documentaries, while the darker realities disappeared behind rehearsed narratives. Reports about illnesses or injuries were downplayed. Obituaries omitted the harshest details. Interviews glossed over on-set experiences, focusing instead on nostalgia. Even decades later, attempts to uncover the full truth were met with vague statements, contradicting accounts, or polite refusals to comment. The result was an incomplete, sanitized version of history, one that hid the cost of greatness. But when viewed from today's perspective, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Yan Huaili's lifelong spinal damage, Zhu Lin's unexplained health issues, the demon actor's chronic respiratory problems, the early deaths of minor performers, the psychological toll on those who vanished from the industry. These weren't isolated misfortunes. They were the echoes of a production pushed too hard, too fast, with too little care for the people who brought its magic to life. In the end, the most haunting part of the so-called curse isn't the idea that the show was cursed at all, but that the suffering was real, preventable, and never publicly addressed. Behind the brilliance of Journey to the West lies a shadow China never fully confronted: the human cost of its greatest legend. When people look back on Journey to the West, 1986, they see nostalgia, warm colors, childhood memories, and the comfort of China's most beloved fantasy. But once the curtain is pulled back, the picture changes. The tragedies that followed the cast weren't isolated accidents or mysterious coincidences. They were the echoes of a production that demanded everything from its actors and offered almost nothing to protect them. Yan Huaili carried his injuries to the grave. Zhu Lin disappeared behind a wall of silence and unanswered questions. The demon actors, whose names few remember. left the industry with scars both visible and invisible, their suffering lost in the shadows of a show that the nation worshipped. And as each story emerged, China did what it often does best. It wrapped the pain in myth. It called it a curse, a spiritual consequence, a supernatural pattern. Anything but the truth, because the truth is harder to face. The truth is that the dangers were real, the chemicals were real, the burns, the infections, the broken bones, the silent trauma, real. And the most haunting part isn't that these tragedies happened, but that they were quietly accepted, quietly forgotten, quietly erased. So the question that lingers isn't whether Journey to the West was cursed. It's something far more unsettling. How many legends were built on the suffering of the people who created them? And if the truth had been spoken earlier, would the world still cling to the magic? Or finally acknowledge the darkness beneath it?